Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Magpie Circle. We've had a bit of a break thanks to Mark Stallard's 50th birthday celebrations in Benidorm. He's back in his 50s, making his debut tonight. Evening, Stell. Did you? Now I know you went to Benidorm. Now, did you ride around in a customised black and white striped mobility scooter? Is what we all want to know.
It would have been fitting, yes, but I can say I was one of the few that didn't take a mobility scooter, didn't hire one. Like I say, it's unbelievable. It's like wacky races out there. So it's not a regular place. It wasn't just me and my missus or anything like that. It was a bit of an ironic sort of break with a group from our local pub who I say I've never watched an episode of the TV program, but they have and they love it, and so they thought it'd be a great idea to go and stay in the Benidorm Hotel as it is on the TV program. Well, like I say, we did, and it meant nothing to me, but they loved having photos taken in various different places. But it was a good break. Yeah, a bit of sun and a bit of a break, and if nothing else, it got me out of a trip to Barrow.
You did well there, Stella. I was up there with my lad, Richard Stanton, Martin Kelp. We all had a curry in the Darber Curry House before the game. The main course was £7.50. Dine in, not takeaway. Eh? Extortionate, eh? And I've got to say, until about the 93rd minute, that was about the highlight of the evening.
Yeah, Dave filled me in. I messaged him from over there, and I messaged him to say the next day, just to say how was it, give him plenty of chance to get back. But how was it? What was the performance like? I'd seen the goal, the penalty, obviously, and then I think the following night they put the highlights there, and so you can see them. But you sometimes tell from 2 minutes of highlights what sort of game it's been, and it didn't look a classic. And from what Dave affirmed that with his performance, we were poor, particularly poor, pretty much first half hour. But then, grew into it at a point was probably about a fair result. But yeah, it wasn't. It didn't sound like I'd missed a classic. Let's put it that way.
Oh, you definitely didn't miss a classic. I can assure you of that. But what are our thoughts and views? There seems to be more efficiency to Notts' play in current weeks. Lots of nils now. 1-0, 1-0 to the Notts, 1-0 to the Arsenal. Do you like that? Can't beat a 1-0. Can't beat a 1-0 as far as I'm concerned. You don't concede, you'll never lose a game. So I'm very happy with the situation. Goalkeepers, Mr. Bass, is he the best keeper in League Two for you so far? Certainly looks the business. The FA Cup, Alfreton Town. Don't mention Colville, whatever you do. Do you want to see a good cup run? I think it's 13 years since we held Manchester City in the third round of the FA Cup. Ian Bishop, header. Near post corner, 1-1. Full team,
Neil
Roberto
Bishop.
Mancini, who almost came to manage Notts, and then we got edged out a bit, I think, at the Etihad or whatever the stadium was called. But what a great experience! And I think the following year was it Fulham? Was it Fulham away? Great years in the cup. Our younger fan base, it's a while since we've done a lot. Let's hope we can go on a cup run again. I've got some figures for you, and by my reckoning, with prize money and a share of gate, to beat Alfreton on Friday night is worth a guaranteed, in terms of prize money and cut of gate, just by beating Alfreton, just getting to the second round, is worth 100 grand. So not to be sniffed at. Not to be sniffed at. Your thoughts and views, as always, on the show. Nigel Bosworth, Spotter's badge from the flock tonight, 5.56. He's been patiently waiting. Hope it was worth the wait, Nigel. What a great win. Come on, you pies, he says. John Parnham, evening from Nuneaton in the dark. Not content with seeing it once, I'm now re-watching the Harrogate match. Oh dear. It could have been 7. Well done, Notts. I look forward to Brown, Cerula, Abbott and others scoring in the future. Gazzalee, 4 hours, 30 minutes to get back from Guildford at an average speed of 36 miles an hour. Average miles per gallon, or have you got an electric, Gazza? Home and ready for another circle session. Evening all from a damp Leon Solent, says Shane Walker, brackets the Solent Magpie. David Dawes, got my FA Cup ticket today. Hope Stewart puts a strong side out. Need Bass and back three. playing some good prize money to be won. We'll get Stell's thoughts and views on interesting point what you do with the goalkeeper. Do you play him or don't you play him on Friday? Richard Terry, Woodborough Pies. Hey, you are easily pleased, Richard. How about this, Stell? What a weekend. Notts win on the Saturday. Fair enough. Daughter gets married on the Sunday. Good planning. Glad that your daughter wasn't getting married on a Saturday, Richard. And a Magpie Circle on Monday night. Life doesn't get much better.
Not necessarily in that order.
Evening all from Paul Huskisson from Kay. I've asked a few questions on the message boards for you. Sam Draper. Really pleased with the progress under Stuart Maynard this season. Goalie and defence is a massive improvement, and we look like a hard team to beat. Very impressed with the recruitment too. Matt Arnold, first time I've had the chance to watch the show live. Wish we were away on Friday. I work in Summercoats, so could have walked to Alfreton's ground. Stephen Newton, looking forward to the FA Cup. Just hope we take it more seriously than the Colville debacle. Evening from Newark, says Adam Kent. Happy with 1-0 wins. Nothing better than 3 points and a clean sheet. However, for our nerves, maybe taking more chances would be nice. Evening from Karen Knight and from Kenneth Pointer. Looking forward to Friday. Just hope we take it seriously. Evening from Ian Haywood. Still very lightweight up front, says Royston, who's not too easily pleased. We definitely need a good goal scorer. Luke Beardsley, saw Luke down the Virgin Active earlier today. Happy with Saturday's performance. Thought Brown had a good game. Luke adds, I'd love an FA Cup run. It might not matter to the teams at the top, but the FA Cup still feels special to me. Paul Sill says, I thought Brown played well. I agree. Nick Cerula was man of the match. Evening to Adi Clark. Looking forward to Friday's game being an Alfreton Magpie. Hope you had a great birthday, Stell. What was your best present? We'll come on to that in a minute. Okay, plenty more to come. Stell, 1-0 at home. You and I would probably know managers in the past, certainly, who got more pleasure out of a few 1-0s than, a 4-2 or whatever. Do you detect any difference? Are we becoming slightly more efficient at the expense of flair and those sorts of things, or are we just reading too much into it?
Look, I would say 90% of the managers and coaches I played for preferred 1-0 over 4-2. Honestly, it is. It's just they are driven on winning games and not conceding. If you do both of them, then that is a decent success and a decent formula for success. I think we have to say you have to look at the stats and you have to look at the performances as well. But the stats tell you we are maybe not quite as prolific in front of goal, but we've certainly tightened up at the back. And I've got the comparative stats from this stage last season.
Yeah.
I know you wouldn't expect any different, but we're a point behind. Only 1 point difference. We had 27 points at this stage last season, 26 now. But we'd scored 30 and conceded 26 last season. We've scored 22, so 8 less, scored 8 less, but conceded only 12, 14 less goals conceded. Now that, to me, is more of a route to success. And where people go, but we're not scoring as much, are we not as adventurous, are we not as attacking? I would still say we're creating chances. You just look at Saturday's game again, and credit to whoever that didn't hear them pick up the name that you said re-watched Harrogate. But if Saturday's game had finished 3-0, I don't think anybody would have complained from Harrogate. Nobody from Notts would have said that's any more than we deserved. We missed chances again, and I think we have been guilty of missing chances. So the upside of that is at least we're creating them. And the difference I feel this year, and again, only 14 games, but you feel with the way we're set up, we don't need to score 4 goals every week to get points and win games. Whereas last season, you felt like if we only scored 1 or 2 last season, you thought that ain't going to be enough to get us maybe a point at best. This season, we've had proof of it, haven't we? 2 1-0 wins in the last 3 games. So the proof is in the pudding there. You can't argue with them stats and facts and figures. I think we're still looking dangerous up front. We haven't got a Macaulay Langstaff, and that's no discredit to Jatta and Didsey, but Maka was just a phenomenon with chances. But we're scoring a decent amount of goals. Yes, it could be better. We're missing chances, but we're creating them. But the fact of the matter is, we aren't being punished for missing them chances. And you feel last season we had to take every chance we created to give ourselves a chance, because we were going to give 3, 4, 5 chances per game to the opposition. This year, Harrogate, barring the last 5 minutes of the game, couldn't create anything, didn't get near. So there's a definite sea change, and that comes from, again, what we all knew from last season. We've got a problem. We're too leaky. We concede too many goals to have any success. So you go about it in the summer. We need to fix it, and by we I mean the club and the recruitment and all that sort of thing. And so far, it looks like they've done pretty well at fixing the problem without totally nullifying as an attacking threat. I think we're not far away. And again, we'll talk about this at length. Throw in the injuries that we've got and the players we've got out, the key players we've got out. We are doing well to pick up the points we are. I think we've picked up 11 out of the last 18 points available in the league. And considering a few weeks ago we were talking about the difficulty, we're starting to play a few more difficult teams, the likes of Wimbledon, Chesterfield, Port Vale. 11 points from 18 is not a bad return at all. So again, more tough games to come. Every game is going to be tough, but I don't think we can really look at anything and say, yeah, there's room for improvement. There always is. But I think we've got to say, given everything, it's been a pretty good start to the season.
Sam Draper says we have 2 strikers in the top 5 of league scorers without our biggest provider in Jody Jones, which is a good point. Lots of us talking about the FA Cup we will come on to that a little bit later in the programme. From one of the worst performances of the season to one of the best, says one of our flock. John Parnham, another one that's a little bit not easy to please. I think that certain players need shooting practice, but on the whole, it's been an excellent season so far. On the subject of clean sheets, defence, how good is Alex Bass at this level still?
Well, from what we've seen, he looks excellent, certainly for this level. And I always think with keepers, you're always restricted to levels for goalies. It's a sort of a separate skill set on its own, isn't it? I think if you're a good keeper, you're a good keeper, and of course the better keepers rise to the top. But I think he's got the makings of being. He's, again, I've said it before. He seems unflappable, and that is a big skill to have. A part of your skill set as a goalkeeper. Okay, he's not made many mistakes. Again, I'll go back to the Bromley. Trying to play out in midfield early on, got intercepted, conceded. But in terms of handling, in terms of shot stopping, I can't remember a real mistake. I can't remember him, coming for a cross, not getting there. I can't remember him dropping anything simple. He's made some great saves, but he's made all the saves you'd expect him to make as well, which is, not always the case. Sometimes you see keepers, throw one in, as we say. So I think he's been exceptional, from what we've seen. But again, I'm not going to make rash statements about he's the best in the division, because I haven't seen everyone in the division. But he certainly looks like he's in that conversation. He's made no mistakes other than that. He's been faultless, really, pretty much. And certainly in terms of the confidence that gives the team and the platform, along with them defenders as well, that give you that platform of solidity. That plays a big part in the rest of the confidence of the rest of the team to go, again, we haven't got to score 4 every week to win a game.
Indeed, it's a point picked up on by ZO. Jimmy Cyril was always happy with a 1-0 win. Will do for me, but January window will be important as always. 2 to 3 attacking players short, potentially, said Zedo. Ian Hayward winning 1-0 is fine, but I think we need more goals, as goal difference will no doubt come into the mix later in the season. Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, I'm like a lot of your old managers still. I think 1-0, brilliant. Sometimes I thought it wasn't a cross to bear, but after so many people saw us on one of the main Sky games against Grimsby, free flowing football, end to end, and kind of the neutrals who know you're a Notts fan. So I caught 20 minutes of that game. You play unbelievable football. It's the best football I've ever seen in League Two. You'll storm the division, but the reality is you're not going to have another 12 performances or results like that at home. You're not going to have it. And, I often draw that comparison with a Stockport or a Wrexham. They had a load of games they won by a goal last season. Didn't play particularly well, but it was so hard to get a goal against them at home. And so I really like the way, although it might not be as entertaining to some who get spoon-fed this diet of basketball, football, and all the rest of it. You hinted at the point, which I think is very good, is that it's a much more tried and trusted formula that is a more efficient way of hopefully finishing in the top three, which is what I think we have to realistically aim for this season.
Yeah, of course. That is the aim. I say in the top 7, but certainly aiming for automatic. That's goes without saying. We said that from the start of the season. Don't get me wrong. I prefer a 4-0 every week, and so would Stuart Maynard, and so would all of us.
But that doesn't happen. Who Stockport and Wrexham didn't
exactly
go up winning 4-0 every other week last year.
This is it. This is where you have to try and anchor yourself in some sort of reality of what football is, and certainly League Two football. This is the old Division 4, fourth division. It's inconsistent in its nature. It absolutely is. Now, Notts, certainly over the last few years, but Notts again this season, have found a process, and a way of playing that is repeatable. It's consistent in the way they play. What you can't guarantee consistency in is the outcome, i.e. the result. You can try and play well, you can pass the ball, you can play through the lines and have a way of playing and try and do it to your best of your ability. But you can't guarantee the result, because you can't guarantee shots going in as opposed to just going wide. You can't guarantee how your opponents are going to play. Little bits of luck, but also you can't guarantee everything working for you on the day as well. You can try as you might. You think you turn up, that Grimsby performance, for example, I think we're going to say, and we might go to the end of the season. I hope we don't, but we might go to the end of the season. And if we can remember, do you know what? That was the performance of the season. It was unbelievable. And it was, and it shows the level that they can play at. But believe me, all them players will have think they've turned up to do exactly the same thing every Saturday, every Tuesday they're asked to play. And it doesn't work like that. Like me and you talk about on the golf course. You aim to hit every shot straight down the middle and straight at the flag, and they go in every direction. But you think you're doing the same thing time and again. Football is very much like that. You always aim to do things exceptionally well, to do them to the best of your ability. You don't mean to misplace a pass, but some games just happen whereby every shot you have goes wide, or every dummy you try and sell to a defender gets bought. Some games everything comes off. You miss controls, send a defender for a dummy. Your shots get a deflection and take it in the top corner. There's things like that you cannot explain, but you do try and replicate. And by replicating or having a way of doing things, a method of playing, a style of play that you can replicate, what they're trying to do is go, by doing this, we think we can control the outcome more often than not, given all these unknown factors in football and the fact that there's an opposition trying to make it difficult for you. So the main thing, again, is if you've got if you've got a team that is resolute and doesn't give out freebies, then your process and Nott's process of way of playing attacking football, by virtue of that, you don't need to be scoring 100 goals a season to have any chance of success. We'd love to, and that would ultimately be the aim, but it's not a necessity. So let's face it, we weren't far off. What was it, 96 last season, and we finished 14th in the table. That is just, when you if that was any other team that we weren't interested in, didn't have an emotional connection with, you'd go mental. absolutely meant to score 96 and finish 14th. Mental. Well, that was us last season. So they've gone about changing it. They've gone about addressing it. And it seems like they've found a pretty reasonable solution so far. So, if it carries on like that, good. And I think we've played teams as well so far that show us that, yeah, there's tough games to come. Of course there is. Loads of tough games to come, 32 of them probably. But there's nobody in the division that Notts need to be fearful of. Can't give them a game, can't beat them on their day, given the process and the way that we play and the talent that we've got. And again, you come back to key players that we're missing. Can other teams handle missing key players like we are at the minute?
Excellent post from Kyle Motson, one of the best so far tonight. Some may say it was only Harrogate, but to me, the level of control was great to see. The football is less expansive than under Luke Williams, but overall, I think we are a better team, especially defensively. Colin Metcalf, every signing we've made has improved our squad from last season. And I'm reminded of a conversation that a former player told me about that he had with the owners towards the end of last season. Without giving too much away, the brother said to this former player, "We've got to buy a whole new back line for next season." So this was kind of like April last year. Got to buy a whole, to be fair, completely true to their word. Macari will be the only person in that back line getting any game time now. Looking at it, they have been entirely true to the word. And they've also signed several other defenders that we've not actually really seen. Well, not seen Luca Ness at all. We've not seen a great deal of McDonald. So we've got quite a few defensive options if someone like Platt, Bedo, who've been rocks so far, so miss out. So I think fair play to the owners. They kind of knew, we all knew, didn't we? But there's you still to go out and buy an entire back line is not necessarily that easy. Andy Easton, the 7 players that were unavailable for selection on Saturday would cripple many a side. Cerula is beginning to flourish now. Baffled as to why James Sanderson, the young lad, scored on his debut, didn't he, isn't among the subs. Wayne Wilkins against Harrogate. The improvement of the inverted wingers was massive. Jury's still out for me. I'm sorry, Wayne. I'm not sure. I think Cerula's doing very well. What might he be like on the other wing? But that's clearly a formula that our coaching staff want to pursue. Get results. No one can argue. When cutting in, they created more chances, whereby shooting more and playing through balls as well as going down the line at times. Sam Draper, I agree with Paul. The reality of this league is that it's not won by flair. All 3 automatic promoted teams last season were very efficient. We were spoilt in the National League with how we could play. We have adapted now. I think that's a very good point as well. Dale Piker, if Notts can keep this up to the new year and we get the assists king coming back and the other injured players back, we could fly away with it. Don't get too carried away. Shane Walker, Doncaster will be a telling test to see where we are going forward. Ian G, suspensions will kick in soon, so time for the others to shine in our defence. Will Morris, I thought McDonald might take Macari's place against Harrogate after those last couple of games, but fair play, Macari was excellent. All right, so that's, and I think also we should mention, both he and his family are big Notts County, are all big Notts County fans. James Belshaw, the Harrogate keeper, he did all right in front of the Cop, didn't he, Saturday for Harrogate? Crikey.
He did, yeah. I say he's got a bit of a knack of doing that when he against Notts, hasn't he? Him and his family, all Notts supporters. But thankfully, we managed to get one past him, and that's proved to be the difference. But yeah, it's I say it's all you need, though. If you're going to keep clean sheet, one is all you need, obviously, and that's plenty good enough. And as like I say, people say about Doncaster will be a test. It will, of course, will. Every game will be a test. But we said this prior to Chesterfield. We said it prior to Wimbledon, Gillingham. We've got varying results out of them. But like I said, we picked up 11 from the last 18 when we said it was going to get tough. There's always periods of a season where it's going to be tough, but they're picking up points, and if they continue to do that, then it bodes well. There's no reason why they can't.
Low blocks, high blocks, all the rest of it. I mean, I think we'd all agree that was a very, very low block by Harrogate. It almost was a final third rather than a half low block, wasn't it? Do you think more teams are going to be as pronounced as that when they come to Meadow Lane? Do you see many teams being expansive and trying to put a press on us? Like you say, these things constantly evolve and adapt. I think it was noticeable Harrogate sat incredibly deep. And ironically, having got through 80, 85 minutes, there were, I wouldn't say there were, massive scares. But when they came out of that shell, then the last 5 or 10 minutes, they did have a few half chances. They did have a few half chances.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, for low block, we used to call it sitting deep. Obviously, sitting in, sitting deep, whatever you want to call it. But I don't imagine more clubs will do that against Notts. I mean, if they do, great, because I think that's a level of respect that we got in the National League, wasn't it? When it's almost, it's not a total admission, but it's almost an admission that you've got better players than us.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to hurt us, so we're going to sit and play on the counter attack. Now, I know people will say, but top teams play counter-attacking football, and they do, and they can use that. So it depends what weapons you've got at your disposal, and we'd all agree, as much as you can't deride anybody, Harrogate haven't got maybe the talent pool and the depth of squad that Notts have got. They've not got the budget that Notts have got, so you can maybe understand that. Do I think more teams will do that? Not really. I think the better, based on the analysis that other clubs will have, I think the other clubs have done better when they've pressed Notts. When they've pressed high, not gung-ho, and I'm not talking about kamikaze, just chasing and leaving yourself exposed and open, but when, say, the front four go and press and try and prevent Notts from building up and force them to go a little bit longer, then I think you could argue that there's maybe been better results. Again, we're third in the table, so there's been no way that's been super successful against us because we found a way of winning most of the games. But I don't think, not in League Two, I don't think teams will want to come. Of course, they'll be sensible. They'll get bodies behind the ball when they're not in possession. But I don't think they'll be quite as obvious as Harrogate were at the weekend because, like I say, they were on a poor run. They've got limited squad depth, if you like. So I think it was a little bit of an admission saying, we're coming here, not for a point, but we're coming here to try and blunt you. And maybe they played the lad following who's got pace up front on his own, to try and counter-attack. And I was speaking to Paul Ball and I said this on the radio. He was doing the game for their local radio. And I was speaking to him before the game. And without wishing to drop him in anything, he sort of said, yeah, he's fast, but, maybe not the best, if you like, in terms of anything else. But he gives them an out ball if they're going to be defending. And that's sort of the way it proved, wasn't he? He was isolated, didn't get much of a look in. So I don't see teams adopting that as the de facto way to do it against Notts, because I think Notts have still got the quality to break teams down like that. But, when they come away, teams are obviously going to try and get bodies behind the ball out of possession.
Yeah, I think sometimes we, because of the size of our fan base now compared to most clubs, the facilities that we have, I do detect sometimes, I'm sure not within the playing camp, we can be a little bit dismissive of other teams. So, Harrogate, for instance, while they didn't look great on Saturday, and like your point about it's almost an admission, we'll just sit outside the 18-yard box for 85 minutes. I seem to recall watching a midweek game when Harrogate played Doncaster on Sky, and Harrogate beat Doncaster fairly easily at their place. Now, I know they're at home, not away, but this again is another indication that, all of these teams somewhere along the way can pose challenges for you. And I don't think, it's only Harrogate. I don't think you should just kind of I don't think that should necessarily detract from the performance.
Absolutely.
They'll take enough points off teams that finish up in automatic and the playoffs this season. Guarantee it.
Yeah, well, they beat Bradford at home, didn't they? They beat Bradford this season. Bradford have started well, got the top scorer in the division. So, and again, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. This year, this League Two, everybody is capable of having an upset. Everybody is capable. There's obviously teams that are stronger on paper and teams that have got better players, if you like, on paper. But any given weekend, anybody can throw in an upset. Anybody. I think Gillingham, when they beat us, after beating us, lost 5 straight games. I think, is that right?
Yes,
I'm fairly
yes,
sure
they
that's
haven't been
right.
terrible. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So when we played Gillingham, you think, well, they're decent, they're strong, they'll upset a few teams, and then they go and lose 5 on the spin. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody could have said that at the time. So there's always going to be upsets. It's League Two. It always has been the case that there's inconsistency. And the teams that be at the top were the ones that find some sort of consistency, some sort of way of getting over the line when you're not playing absolutely plan A football. And Notts are a perfect example of that this season. I think when they're not at their absolute free flowing best, and I'm not saying they've been poor in any games particularly, but when they're not at their absolute free flowing best, then they've still found a way of picking up points in all but 2 games. And that's commendable at this level.
Andy Eastham says Harrogate manager post-match admitted we're a very different proposition now to when they beat us at Wembley. That's a good point. Yeah, they ran rings around us a bit, didn't they, at Wembley? Crikey, yeah, good point. Good point. Right, FA Cup, magic of the cup and all that. I've just dug a few figures up that are published by the FA. I think there is a near 100% acceptance and enthusiasm for us to have a decent run in the cup this year. Financial benefits are pretty important too. So just so you know, everyone, if we win on Friday, that's 45 grand in the bin. If we lose, dear, that's 15 grand. Second round, if you win, you get 75 grand, and if you lose, you get 20 grand. So my quick mental arithmetic here is if you win 45 in the first round and went out, that's 65 grand in prize money. And the way it works with gate revenues in the FA Cup matches, broadly speaking, you get 40% of the revenue, 40-40 for the 2 teams, and then the FA Cup, the Football Association, take something like 20% that is used towards their various initiatives, grassroots, and so on, goes into their coffers throughout the season. Third round, if you're starting to get a bit excited and you win that, that's 115 grand. So you can kind of see how this multiplies quite exponentially. So on the face of it, Stell, Alfreton Town at home Friday night because of the clash with Forest. It's a pretty good draw for us. There is still, for some, the spectre of Colville, who were lower down the pyramid than Alfreton. Alfreton are going very well in National League North. We seem to play them every year in pre-season, so I've had quite a few visits up to Alfreton. So they're coming down here. We know the league has to be the primary objective. We know many teams, Championship and above, will be prioritising league, resting players, and all of the rest of it. What do you do Friday night? Team selection. I know you're going to take it importantly, but that is often reflected in how you, on the strength of the team you pick, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Look, of course, we all want a cup run. We've been saying it for years, and nobody ever wants to lose a game. I know there might be
Yeah.
occasions in the EFL Trophy where you're saying is progress really beneficial, but I think now with the squad Notts have got, that I don't think they've got to fear any extra games. We're realistic to know that we're not going to win the FA Cup, but progress and, like you say, the money and the rewards that it brings is certainly definitely looking for, particularly given the scarcity that we've had in recent years. So I'd be going strong. Again, key factors into why managers don't pick what you class as the strongest team: fear of injury, obviously, to key players, and games in close proximity coming up. Now, in terms of injuries, we do have a bit of an issue there because we know we're missing a fair number of players, particularly in the attacking third of the pitch. And we'll come on to that in a minute. But in terms of proximity of games, we've got a full week up to the Friday night, no midweek games, and obviously no midweek game the week after. So I think that frees up Stuart to play, if you would like, a stronger team than if we'd got a game next Tuesday, or if we had a league game tomorrow night, where you've only got limited recovery between games. And it's always that recovery bit between games where you are risking injuries, strains, muscle injuries, things like that. Given, say, full week before, full week afterwards, then I think I'd be very tempted to go as strong as possible. Caveat or asterisk, whatever you want to call it, the fact we've got 6 or 7 players injured. We know Jody, Dan Crowley missed out with a niggle, Curtis Edwards, Connor Grant, blah, blah, and so on and so forth. Then you go, okay, we've got to be a little bit careful that we don't get a key injury to, let's say, an Alassane Jatta or a David McGoldrick. Now, I said I would probably play one of them, but not both. Now, that might be a 45 minutes each, a 60-30 scenario. You'd have one on the bench, if needed. But I think you can protect players rather than weaken the team. But I think also there's the other case of who needs minutes in their legs. So I'm thinking of the likes of a Rod McDonald, who played a bit at Barrow. He's been excellent in the EFL Trophy. Apparently didn't get off to a great start at Barrow, but again, I didn't see it. So I can't comment too much on that. But I think he would come into the reckoning to give want somebody in the back line a bit of a breather, but it wouldn't be wholesale changes. It wouldn't be, for me, wholesale changes at all. I'd look at who maybe could do with some more competitive minutes, but it wouldn't be like an EFL Trophy team at all. I wouldn't be looking at, I'm afraid, them young lads, maybe on the bench, maybe 2 or 3 on the bench, but certainly I wouldn't be weakening the team other than them couple of bits that I've sort of mentioned. If there was somebody who's been carrying a niggle, for instance, but we don't know about that. But if somebody's got a bit of a problem, then obviously I wouldn't risk them, given that you've got a senior enough or quality enough replacement to put in place. So for me, I would expect 2 to 3 changes, maybe.
Okay.
But I wouldn't expect.
Oh, we lost you momentarily. So
Oh,
I think
right.
you were just saying this. So 2 to 3 changes, no more. Okay, let me throw the goalkeeping situation at you. Do you keep Bass in goal, or do you bring Slocum, or there's a young lad that they've taken on as well, I think, this year as kind of I think he's a 18, 19-year-old. Do you meddle with goalkeeper, or do you stick with Bass?
So, well, again, and I'm old school a little bit, and I know the game's changed. I try not to be the dinosaur, but I don't see I get the reason for playing your reserve keeper, get him some competitive minutes. But and like I say, in Sam, I know people have got a bit of a down on him, but he's still a decent keeper and all that sort of thing. But I would play Alex Bass. I don't. Again, I don't really see a reason not to. But I wouldn't be overly surprised if Sam played. Let's put it that way. But I think chances are we're going to progress in the EFL Trophy. I think Sam's going to play in that. I would certainly play him in that. But yeah, I think I'd go strong. I like I say, with a week's recovery, I would go strong. Again, I would, whatever team put out would still back us to beat Alfreton without any disrespect to Alfreton. And if we aren't strong enough to beat them at home, then questions will be asked. But I don't see any overarching reason to change it too much unnecessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I would be in agreement, Stel. I would play Bass. I think goalkeeper is such an influential position. Yeah, I wouldn't be making too many. Yeah, like you, 2, 3 changes, but it would be the core of your first team rather than a handful of first teamers in it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So The flock seem in agreement. Sam Draper, I agree with Stowe. We have to mix up the squad on Friday a little, but not weaken it to a point where we could find it more difficult than necessary. Playing AJ one half and Didsey in the second might be a good idea. Andy Eason makes the point that Didsey appeared none too chuffed to be subbed on Saturday. Managing his minutes, I think, is the phrase. Martin Shipley, I think in the FA Cup, we should always play our strongest team. The other cups can be where we can give squad players a run out. Only my opinion. Georgia Equine, Bass 100%. Ian G, Martin and Brown to start. Both need the minutes. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. Andy Easom has reminded me it's the Bermudan Milai Perrott who is the third choice that the club have brought into the professional group this season. Yeah, interesting, I think, the Cup. There's one or two of you on here who are from the Jurassic era, myself, talking about the FA Cup quarter-final against Everton all them years ago, and Everton went on to win it, and Andy Gray scored with a headed half volley. You don't see many of them. He was on the floor, heads it on the half volley, and we went out, and Brian Kilcline told me the story afterwards where he should have booted the ball clear, but he had a moment of conscience that he didn't think he could volley Andy Gray's head, and so he momentarily held the foot back from booting the ball, and Andy Gray with a half volley header put Notts out of the FA Cup at the quarter-final stage. Alfreton is not a million miles from when you was at Derby and all the rest of it. I mean, Alfreton will probably empty on Friday night, won't it, Still? I mean, I think they're written on about 500, 600, 700 coming down.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah, I've played there many a time. It used to be a regular sort of pre-season trip, and played there for a few clubs. I may well have even had a friendly for Notts, but I can't remember exactly. But the one thing, I mean, we all talk about it. We said about it at the time we were on it, weren't we, doing this when the draw was made. The one thing you want in the FA Cup is a home draw, and I think that's particularly, and again, having had experience at Alfreton, good non-league club, real good non-league club, good pedigree at them sort of levels. They've been in the National League in not too distant past, so they're a decent non-league team. I think their ground is the stereotypical cup upset ground. I think it absolutely is. So I think it's a godsend that we're at home, big pitch, immaculate pitch, familiar surroundings. So I think that gives us an advantage. Of course, it does, as home advantage does. So hopefully we'll be more than good enough to win the game. But it'd be a tough test because, again, it's Alfreton's cup final, isn't it? They're not going to play on a better ground, better pitch.
Great draw for them as well. Great draw.
Absolutely, yeah. And because it's just down the road as well, they're not far. They're going to travel in numbers. Again, against, like, we're not going to mention Colville, but we've sort of mentioned it a couple of times. But it's exactly the same thing. They'll come here with nothing to lose. Their cup final, they could come here absolutely fearless. So if our players, whether it's a strongest team, whether it's a multi-change team, however they go, if they're not right mentally, don't approach it in the right way, then you can always have the rug pulled out from under your feet and get a punch on the nose. It's no football game is a foregone conclusion. The minute you think like that, then that's when you come undone. So they've got to address it properly, go at it properly. But if they do that, I fully expect them to win the game comfortably, and it could become a game where the likes of a Josh Martin, a Giovanni Brown, maybe get a first goal, maybe have a real influential performance, and just helps them feel part of the fabric of the club, feel like they're really part and in the place, and can settle them down, give them a bit of confidence. So again, it's team selection becomes important in that respect as well. You want to try and influence them sort of things if you can, without taking liberties.
And I stand, well, not corrected, but informed and educated. We are back, says Alfred, and have already sold over 800 tickets. And just to be a little bit more precise, Stephen Newton says Alfred have sold 883 tickets so far. Well done, Spotters Badge, Stephen Newton. So that would say to me they're going to be over 1,000, which is great. good atmosphere.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Well, weirdly, that can help. That can help the Notts players, because I imagine we're not going to be getting 10,000 there, obviously, or as much as that at the game. So if there's no atmosphere, it can lead to a flat performance. Again, I say it all the time. It's amazing how much difference the fans do make. Having a bit of atmosphere, it gets the adrenaline pumping, and as a result of that, physiologically, you're more alive, you're more alert, you're more at it. So if you go in, okay, people, not saying Notts fans are doing it, but people go, it's only Alfreton and we only have 1,000. The fact that they'll have, that if they have a decent number singing and cheering, you get sort of almost a response. So it creates the atmosphere in itself. So again, if there's any sort of apathy or any sort of complacency on behalf of the players going into the game, or turning out when they go out on the pitch on a Friday night because it's quiet, then the fact that there's a bit of an atmosphere being made, that can help the home team as well as the away team, of course.
Yeah. Friday night under the lights at Meadow Lane. Always like Friday nights. Much prefer it, I think, to a Sunday game, really. So hopefully we're getting a decent crowd. For those of you Crew away, 1,000 tickets. They went on priority sale today. Donny, we've got, I think it's 3,000 going. I think Chesterfield sold out of their allocation as well. So certainly a huge appetite for Notts games at the future. And I think I'll also we've got a special Christmas live outside broadcast. That sounds a bit grand, doesn't it? So the date for your diaries is Friday, December the 6th. We're doing a live outside broadcast the Friday night. It's Colchester at home on the Saturday at the Navigation in there. They call it the Big Shed. And it's Mad Dog in the Big Shed. So Martin Allen has agreed to come up and have a special Christmas night with an audience with all of us on Friday, December the 6th. Get the date booked, get it sorted. Be 6:30 for 7 o'clock start. Tickets will be £10. They'll be on sale later this week. We'll send out all the links on all our socials. Stell will be coming along with me, trying to keep Mad Dog in check, which I think it's fair to say. It will be interesting and lively. We'll do half an hour, two halves. One will be kind of a general chat with Martin, and then the rest will be your questions to Martin, asking whatever you want. I've no idea what responses you will get. I promise you they will be entertaining. So that's a Christmas night, Magpie Circle Live, Friday, December the 6th, at the Trent Navigation in their Big Shed. For those, I know the next question will be, what about the Nest? We are in discussions with the club about having some shows at the Nest. It's a bit of a bigger venue. So we're kind of just dipping our toe in the water at the Navi on Friday, December the 6th. And then we're looking to do some more events, if this one works out well for everyone, at the Nest in 2025. And hopefully we can do a few of these each year. Stowe, you were saying you were trying to remember whether you'd ever played against Martin.
Well,
if you did, he must have kicked you.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I was different areas of the pitch, but I feel sure I've played against him years ago. Obviously, we get to this sort of age, but yeah, I can't remember. And obviously, played against his teams on a couple of occasions as well. But yeah, I mean, one of football's genuine characters, isn't he? As everybody knows, and I'm sure it will be good value on a Friday night as well, particularly. So always interesting, always a good listen. But yeah, looking forward to it. Yeah, I don't know about us being able to control him and keep him in check.
You don't control him. Mad Dog will be barking. Don't you worry about that. Will he be bringing his dog, says Andy Easom. But it was Monty the Black Labrador, and I'm sure some of our flock must have been asked to walk his dog. A bit before your time, still at Notts, but he used to love, he had a Black Labrador called Monty. He used to take it to the away games, and he'd get off the bus, and he would find the nearest Notts fan at like 1:30 outside the ground and say, "Would you mind walking my dog, please?"
Yeah.
so this random Notts fan would be tasked with walking his dog around the ground and returning it.
I bet nobody ever said no.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Monty's gone to the doggy pearly gates in the sky. He's now got Dennis the Dachshund, I think. He loves his dogs as well. So we'll see whether Dennis the Dachshund is going to come up as well at the big shed. I did actually ask Dave Willens today, and he said dogs are allowed. So there you go. So you might see his dog. And members in the audience may be asked to take his dog for a walk around Meadow Lane on Friday night. You never know. But full details of that, tenner, later in the week. Act quick, because they will go quickly. And I know a lot of you travel from longer distances. So if you wanted, maybe come up on a Friday, stop over in a cheap travel lodge on a Friday night, and you can see Martin in the navigation on the Friday night, not at home to Colchester the following day. Still, so we've got a few minutes to go for the rest of the programme. Runners and riders. When we look at League Two, we kind of said blanket finish potentially this year. Port Vale have got a slight edge at the minute, and they've knocked a few teams over recently. Do you see anyone pulling away, or do you kind of see this blanket finish with up to 10 or 12 clubs contesting both automatic and the top 7?
Yeah, I look, somebody might pull away. At the minute, it's Port Vale, who are 4 points clear. But you don't know. With 32 games remaining, there's a lot of time for form and things to change. By the very nature of a league, there's always some. The winners and first always going to be a number of points ahead. But I think in general, the grouping of the table, even in this early stage, and the fact we said right from early on, everybody had lost a couple of games by, was it about 8 or 9 games in, that you go, well, there's no team that's going to go through it flawless. There's no team that isn't beatable. There's no team that can't have an off day. And there are going to be so many, I say it's not really upset results, is it? But there's so many results that could go any way of all 3 results that it's a really difficult league to predict. We did this a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? Saying, who do people think? And obviously, we should have done it at the start of the season. But obviously, at the time, if you ask them now, you'll pick the top 3: Port Vale, Walsall, ourselves. But then, as Notts fans, you sort of have the mentality that, well, it won't be Notts. We will fall away maybe, and like last year, and there'll be somebody else. But it's so tight. It is so tight, and I don't see anything different in terms. Forget the table, forget what he said, because that's just what's gone. You can only really judge the teams that you either see on the telly or that play against Notts. And I haven't seen anybody that's come and been too hot to handle. And I've also not seen anybody that's been desperately bad. We beat Grimsby, but we were excellent that night, and we'd have beaten anybody with that performance. Conversely, people like Harrogate at the weekend didn't pose too much of a threat, but it was 1-0. That they hung on and hung in. So I genuinely, I've said it from the start, and I've not seen anything to change my mind. I think there's a dozen teams or so that will genuinely fancy their chances of being either in the mix for automatic or in and around the playoffs, and they'll be disappointed if they don't get there. And I honestly believe that it is an open season. Like we've said before, there are no big hitters really in the division in terms of budget that can blow everyone else out the water. So it is a good season. It's a good season for somebody who wants to dip their bread and go, do you know what? Let's make hay while we can. It is an open division. It really, really is. So why not? Why not for Notts? Why not do that? And like I say, I know people will always say we need X, Y, and Z, more firepower, more this, more that, the other. Of course, but just think, all these other teams, their supporters will be saying exactly the same thing. So again, I think it's in the melting pot. Again, you can only control what you do, and Notts can only control what they do. They've got to go out and perform whilst they've got these injuries. But again, I highlighted that for me on the radio at the weekend with the injuries that we had. Again, with no Dan Crowley, no Jody Jones, and we don't want to make it all about a couple of players, but they are real gems to be missing out on at this level in terms of creativity. And again, I go back to, name me another team if you take their 2 creative stars out of it at this level, or at any level that would still then go on and win games, pick up points. But credit to Notts squad, you had a little bit of trepidation when we heard the team, the changes that were made. You go, oh, right. To get all 3 points, keep a clean sheet, and in the manner of it, again, the dominant performance, the way they played, the fact that we could have won 2, 3, or 4 is absolute credit to the strength of those players that came in, and maybe earns a little bit more trust in them as well from us all. But I think that's not to be sniffed at. I think other clubs at this level, without them key players, or their key players like we've missed, maybe don't take 3 points. And like I say, that's a credit to Notts. So again, I mentioned as well on the radio, there's 3 more league games before December, obviously because of the cup games. So there's only 9 more points to play for before December. And you'd like to think that by December, we'd have 1, 2, 3, maybe of the players that are out back available. So if we can carry on just picking up points, winning the FA Cup, then we could be in a really good position by the time we start getting more players back. But if we keep winning, then players don't automatically get in the team. So it creates a decent problem in itself.
Ian Jesus, I can't see Darren Moore being at Port Vale till the end of the season, likely to be poached. We know from past experience when we lost our own manager, Luke Williams, in January last year, that when you're doing well, people take a look at your managers. Luke Beardsley, I don't think anyone we've played so far has been spectacular. Didn't think Port Vale were anything too special. MK Dons on the move upwards, says Shane Walker. They've already played their change the manager card. Accrington were dire, but have improved, says Stephen Newton. Also, just want to mention, well done to everyone involved with the Notts County Memory Club. We spoke a little bit about it before. Les Brad has been heavily involved in the one at Notts County. It's where former Notts players, it's an initiative by the Professional Footballers Association. Notts have got their own memory club now, and it's an opportunity for former Notts players going as far back as the 60s to come together on a Friday afternoon. Went along with old mucker of mine from Leicester, Notts County goalkeeper Seamus McDonough, and it was lovely to see so many players spanning 6-7 decades. John Barnwell, who must be in his mid-80s now. Barney looking very well, I have to say, in his blue suede shoes. There you go. In your 80s wearing blue suede shoes. Barney was looking very good. And Stuart Maynard very kindly gave his time. And so he came and had a little question and answer with Les. And it was quite interesting in terms of the older players talking about the approach to football, and Stuart kind of trying to share an insight into how that whole ethos has changed. And he also made some very good points about, even from a very early age, he was very keen to get into coaching. So having been released by Watford, I think it was, he was already actively getting the badges, thinking about coaching career in his 20s. So well done for getting a shot in the big league. But I thought very well organised, excellent, and an excellent initiative that Notts and several other clubs are actively involved in. So I thought just give that a mention tonight. Stell, thank you very much for your time as always. We've got a weekend off with a Friday night game. I don't mind that. I quite like that. I quite like that. Here we go. The Flock, Andy Easom. John Barnwell will be 86 on Christmas Eve. He's doing well. Blimey. He's doing very well. Stell, thank you as always for your time. You will be in the commentary hot seat on Friday night, I presume.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, no problem. I think it's Adam this Friday doing the commentary. So myself and Adam will be there. Yeah, Friday night and a weekend off. Yeah. So I always find myself sitting watching the football scores coming on. So I think I'll do something great with a weekend off, and then just sit watching all the football results coming and realising that all these years I've not had a Saturday to myself. I've not really missed much.
Yeah. Hey, well, as long as we're in the FA Cup second round, because game is played to a conclusion, no replay. then it will be a good weekend. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the members of the flock for your participation and contribution. Get that date, Friday, December the 6th, a Christmas special with Martin Allen. We'll be posting details of how you can get those tickets. £10 admission. Meet Martin, get things signed, photos, all of that. We know what Martin's like. He's great value. So that's Friday, December the 6th. Stel, thank you very much indeed. It's good night.
Pleasure. And good night as well. Pleasure. Have a good week, everyone.
And we'll see you all Friday night against Alfreton. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.